So I'm Matt Zimmerman. I lead the commerce engineering team for Magento. So happy to be here. Have a ton of content. If anybody has looked at 2.3 lately, you will understand that there are a lot of great things coming. So we'll jump right into it. So one of the most unique things that we're doing with 2.3 is we are slightly enhancing what the release timelines look like. What that means is, 2.3.0, which we will release at the end of the month, will come with the new core features, will come with bug fixes. It will have breaking changes. As we move on to looking at 2.3.1, 2.3.2, and really those quarterly patch releases, you're going to find bug fixes in there, you're going to find security fixes in there, but you're also going to see us continue to add additional features as we have done in 2.2. Instant checkout was a feature we added in 2.2.2 last year. We're committed to having no breaking changes. The only reason we would break that covenant would be for security fixes. So if there's something that were to pop up that would require us to do updates for security fix, that's really the only items that we would focus on there. Backwards incompatible changes. So this is probably the most helpful slide for the developers in the room. I would highly suggest going out to the DevDocs site and reviewing exactly what we've defined those backwards incompatible changes will be for 2.3. So starting in 2.3, we're doing this now as part of our pre-release activities. So starting in beta, we began publishing this information, and as we continue to refine it and identify it, that information is getting out there. So if you do extensions, if you have custom dev, right, these are things you want to focus on. That way, as 2.3 comes out, you understand what new work may lie there for you to do that upgrade. PWAs, right? PWAs is definitely the most fancy thing that we have coming with 2.3. And that's really, mobile has continued to change commerce and will continue to change commerce as we move forward. Smartphone penetration is expected to be 90% by next year. Almost 75 consumers are engaging in some form of mobile shopping today. And PWAs are really about how to produce the most optimal mobile shopping experience possible. We have invested heavily with Google to develop, what the PWA is going to look like for us, so that we're implementing a highly optimized standards-based approach with the choices that we're making. This is going to provide, PWAs provide a very native-like experience through a completely, web-based implementation. You can have direct access from the home screen, just like an application. You can operate with limited connectivity, so you can do things like fetch aheads, right? So you can have your most frequently accessed products downloaded with the home page, so that if limited connectivity were to occur, there's still that ability to pull content for that user. And it completely integrates with the native phone notifications. So service workers are now supported across all major browser types. And we're going to produce the Venia reference implementation, which is well underway right now. And what that allows you to do, just as Luma does, is really transform that reference theme into a customized theme for your storefront. Multi-source inventory. This is by far the largest community-driven effort ever for Magento. It was the top requested partner feature. It was a feature that we were struggling with internally to get prioritized in staff, but through the community engineering team working with a lot of our partners and developers, we were able to push this effort forward and result in some really excellent features. So the source-based algorithm for MSI out of the box is a merchant designated priority. But I know that in the contribution yesterday, they were already working on the first draft of the geo-based. I think Rick actually finished the first draft of the geo-based algorithm. So anybody has an idea on how many different contributors have participated in MSI? Any guesses? 80. 16 different agencies, 795 different commits. So this has been a very large effort, completely driven by the community. If you've participated at all or kept up with it, they have done weekly demos. They've really developed a lot of best practices that we want to continue to move forward as we do more community projects. As we highlighted with PWA, one of the things that we have delivered is PWA Studio, which really provides an easy-to-use application to build out PWAs. Incho today has already built their first draft of a PWA implementation without us even having the reference Venia done. And they've done that on top of just utilizing PWA Studio. GraphQL is a huge developer improvement and at the base of how do you power a PWA. That's going to allow us to separate front-end and back-end experiences, utilize Magento in a headless way, and provide flexible and very performant APIs. Asynchronous and bulk web APIs. This was another community-delivered effort, particularly through two of our partners. Declarative Schema simplifies the install and upgrade process for the database. So PWA Studio, we have moved to a mono repository. These are some of the different components that make up PWA Studio. I definitely recommend going out to GitHub and downloading and starting to play with it. This is where we're going. As we move through 2.3 and release it and release the Venia reference implementation, we will look towards deprecating, the current front-end implementation towards 2.4. So we want to make sure that we talk about it, and as everything that we do, the existing implementation is going to be there. It's going to be there at least for 2 years, right? I know that some people are a little concerned. We talk about PWAs, and they're afraid that we're going to abandon the current front-end implementations. We're definitely not abandoning it. We will follow our normal deprecation and then removal process. So, the front ends as they are written today will be there for at least 2 years. So, GraphQL provides the fastest part of PWA. It's a query API language that's really focused on getting the fewest amount of requests necessary to get the information that you need to utilize. And it allows you to define that in a custom way so that you're getting the least amount of data. So fewest requests, least amount of data, that's how we're going to truly get a much more performant front end. GraphQL is there completely to facilitate storefront-based interactions. The REST APIs, SOAP APIs will still be there for admin-based actions. As I mentioned before, it's going to help provide independent front-end and back-end development. So, your developers can truly separate those efforts. And your backend developers can provide those very consistent, defined interfaces necessary for the front-end dev, independent of how your front-end dev may be proceeding. So really having that ability to have independent development should make it easier for your development teams to integrate and deliver in predictable fashions. So this is the GraphQL schema for 2.3.0. It supports queries for custom attribute metadata, currently logged in users, products, categories, URL resolutions for products, categories, and CMS pages. The GraphQL implementation for 2.3.0 is not the complete implementation. It's the beginning of the implementation, and as I mentioned, as we continue to move through the various patch releases for 2.3, we will add additional supported queries within GraphQL. So this is a sample request response body for GraphQL. You can see the products on the left, starting with 24 MB. The request specifies which fields we want to retrieve the data for, and the right you see the result for that data. So extensions with GraphQL support. We highly recommend extension developers create an additional module for GraphQL. So, this way it makes it easy to discern where that GraphQL implementation is, and it's very clear how you're bundling that in. And as you can see, just adding in the schema GraphQL file under the bundle GraphQL folder makes it very easy to discern where this is and how it is found. Here's a snippet from a GraphQL schema. You define a type of entity described in supported fields with their types and a resolver that will resolve the query into the data. By specifying the doc annotation, you provide the description that will be displayed in the generated schema. So what you see right here is actually the different GraphQL supported queries that we talked about that will come with the 2.3.0 release. Some of the future plans for GraphQL, either through the 2.3 patch process and as we move into 2.4, include mutations to support checkout and payments, storefront GraphQL API for checkout, orders, and my account. Also some improvements to the framework based off of the feedback on some initial implementations that we've seen. GraphQL, if you're interested in it, this is another item, as Max kind of highlighted earlier, that we're looking for community contribution to. So please, if it interests you at all, please join and participate in continuing to move it forward. Asynchronous Web APIs. So these are both the asynchronous web APIs and the bulk web APIs are amazing additions that we're really getting with 2.3 that were completely driven by the community. So as you can see, the contributors from ComWrap and Balance really work together to provide a great implementation. So the Asynchronous Web API provides you the ability to make a request, get a request ID back, and then there's a separate reporting endpoint that you can then poll with that request ID to see the status of that request that you made. And that tied in with the implementation for Asynchronous Bulk API really gives you the ability to push large amounts of data to Magento and come back and validate later that data has been processed into the system. These APIs support post, put, and delete operations, and definitely provide much more performant ways of dealing with those large data sets that need to get replicated into your commerce instance. We've moved MessageQueue to open source. So we've unified the implementation of open source and commerce modules. And we've done this in multiple areas. So the first was the MessageQueue, and that was actually, when we made that decision, it actually allowed us to do the async work, because now there was an underlying MessageQueue structure that they could build on top of. We added request validation. So front-end controllers receive a request. It matches an action based on the request. Nothing new so far. In 2.3, an action controller can implement one of the specific action interfaces that correspond to the supported HTTP method, such as get, post, patch. Now the front-end controller has the request and the action controller, with the action controller implementing specific action interfaces. So the action controller calls the request validator to validate requests with corresponding action. Currently, 2 validators are enabled by default. The HTTP method validator, which validates that the request is the list of methods supported by the action. In the case, it should be get, post. The CRS validator, this relies on the CRS validation in the action controller. If it implements the CSRF aware interface, for any post request requires a form key to be present. This is an area that I'm particularly excited in. So the way that you managed your database scripts in Magento 2 previously was via imperative PHP scripts. They were located in the setup folder. Though it provides flexibility for installation and upgrade, it could grow really large. And it may be hard to follow sometimes on what actually is the end state for what that database would look like. With 2.3.0, it becomes possible to declare the database schema using XML files. The database schema is located in the DB schema XML under the etc folder of the module. If a schema should be changed in the next version of the module, the XML declaration is changed, and the Magento setup recognizes the difference and performs the setup upgrade. So you define the end state of the schema that you want, not tell it exactly how to do it. And with the declarative schema, it will figure out the necessary schema changes to get there. The benefits of declarative schema comparing to the old approach are more natural. It's a more natural approach to the declaration of desired state. It's easy to understand what the final state of the schema is going to look like. The setup process is idempotent, so it can be run multiple times, and no matter if you've run it before, and not be worried about ending up in a inconsistent state. It has rollback support by design. When rolling back the previous version of the module, the old schema is automatically applied. In many cases, just the XML declaration is enough. But in more complex cases, a PHP script may be helpful to perform the necessary actions during an upgrade. In this case, patches can be used. Those are PHP classes located under the setup patch folder of the module. Schema patches are necessary in cases when more complex operations are executed during the execution. For example, moving data when renaming a column. Data patches are still the only way to upgrade or install data. In order to create a patch, a data patch, implement a patch interface provided by the framework. The Magento framework provides several patch interfaces. Select one that is suitable for your specific case. The patch will be executed once and recorded, so it's skipped the next time the upgrade process is run. Then what's with the old setup scripts? For backwards compatibility, Magento setup framework supports both the old setup and the new declarative schema type. Again, we always provide the ability to continue to operate the way you always have, as well as now showing you the new path. So both will be supported through the duration of 2.3. As we move into 2.4, again, those become when we start to look to fully deprecate and remove the old setup. It's highly recommended that you begin transitioning your old setup scripts to the new approach, as the support for the old scripts, as I mentioned, will drop in the next version of Magento. Page Builder. So this is a feature that has really resonated particularly with the various merchants that we've talked about. It marries the content and commerce. It provides a very easy mechanism for our merchants to update and easily execute in-context editing. Full drag and drop. Page Builder is a visual editor that replaces WYSIWYG. It will be available in Magento Commerce, although we're also planning to add it as an extension on Marketplace that can be purchased for open source. So we recognize the value of it. We're including it with Commerce, but we're also providing that ability for any merchant to purchase it, even for using on open source. The core module provides a set of base components, such as buttons, columns, images, each declared in an XML file. Third-party extensions can then declare and register additional components or extend declaration of existing ones following a common Magento pattern, declaring another XML file that will be merged with the original one. Page Builder is built on top of Knockout, TypeScript, Magento UI components. I know that there's been some conversations going around that we were removing Knockout in 2.3. That's not really the case. Knockout will still be there, but as we move headless, that again becomes the point at which Knockout starts to get removed from our front end set. So first Page Builder will be available through the early access program. I know Igor has been tweeting just recently about how to sign up and participate with the EAP. With 2.3.0, we'll be moving it into beta. So although Page Builder won't ship with the GA version of Page Builder with 2.3.0, we are going to ship the beta. So we want to be able to have it available for people to begin looking at. When we get to 2.3.1, we'll have the final implementation ready to go. So beta with 2.3.0, general availability with 2.3.1. It won't be listed on Marketplace yet with the initial implementation. So until we get past the 2.3.1 GA date, that's the point at which we'll look at getting it onto Marketplace. So that'll probably be in Q2 of next year sort of implementation for us. So on the platform performance and security front, we've made significant reductions in the indexation time. So our performance engineering team has spent a lot of the last year on indexers. Some of this value we've seen in the last few patch releases for 2.2. There's a lot more value that is being delivered in 2.3. The security updates, adding the two-factor authentication, Google reCAPTCHA, access controls for cache management. On the open source front, so not just MessageQ, but we've also added Elasticsearch support now to open source and deprecated the MySQL search. There's a lot of quality enhancements that are coming. And then a ton of work has been done around library updates. So adding PHP 7.2 support, removing Zen Framework 1. I think there's 15 different packages that have been removed there. And really focused on making sure that we're ensuring PCI compliance and high quality and performance in our delivery. Two-factor authentication is another great example of a community-contributed project. It supports Authy, Duo, U2F keys, and the Google Authenticator. Google reCAPTCHA is added to admin and customer login forms. including invisible reCAPTCHA support. We've upgraded TinyMCE from version 3 to version 4, with version 3 being deprecated. The plan then will be to remove version 3 when we get to 2.4. Elasticsearch. So we've migrated Elasticsearch down to open source. We've provided Elasticsearch 5 support. It will be the default engine. So again, we're really focusing on how do we consolidate the technology stack choices between open source and commerce. That way, we're not supporting different solutions that provide different results. If you've ever worked with search, the default set of results that you would get for MySQL search would almost never match the set of results that you would get for Elastic. And this way, we have a single solution that we're going to work towards best optimizing. We've added 7.2 support. This is included, I think, 32 different libraries upgraded at last count. We've migrated from mcrypt to Sodium. We made a few changes in the public API. We've done the Zen Framework 1 support cleanup. We've dropped 7.0 support. As many of you know, 7.0 actually stops being supported even from a security perspective 3rd of December. So we continue to move the product forward and keep it as current as possible with the various technology stack pieces that we have. Package versionings are removed from the composer file. And then we've changed those to a wildcard process. Instead of the versions being implemented during development, we allow now the release publication process to set what those versions are. The change simplifies working with modules from Git repos, where the version means nothing, as you won't work with composer packages. Versions just introduced confusion because they were changing during release publication. So the version you would see in Git would be different than the version that would be included with the composer packages. On the quality front, there are over 1,800 different bug fixes that we've provided. There are multiple security fixes that have been incorporated. And we've really invested heavily, both in what the community has participated in through the contribution days, as well as we've brought in additional teams that have spent a lot of time focusing on additional bug fixes. With the hard work and incredible collaboration of the core engineering and community, the great features you see here are possible. Check out the DevDocs site for information on how to get it. Thank you.